good evening, everybody. Thank you for attending this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Thursday, the 13th of March 2025. I'm Deborah Platt, I'm the chair of the meeting. This is Councillor Lees and he's my vice chair for the meeting. When speaking, please do not obstruct your mouth to enable lip reading or the use of closed captions. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarms sound, please exit the best way you can. And please ensure all your mobile phones are switched off. We have some officers here with us. We've got Jennifer Mullins and we've got Chief Inspector James Neal from the Lancashire Constabulary. Thanks very much for attending. If I can... Oh, sorry, number one, I haven't got an agenda. There we go. Yeah, so apologies. I've got Councillor Ainsworth, Councillor Khan, who's joining us online, and Councillor Snape might be late, but she's already made it. And Councillor Hayden is also joining us online. Is Councillor Wilkie online as well? What is that? Oh, it's Councillor McGovern's picture on the bottom. No, that's fine. Okay, do we have any declarations of interest? No? Okay, so if we can move to item 2, which is minutes of the last meeting on Thursday the 30th of January, pages 5 to 12. Does anybody have any issues with these minutes, the draft minutes? No? Do I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Green. Yeah, Councillor Snape, thank you. And a show of hands, thanks. Lovely. Right, can I move to Councillor France's report, because Councillor France needs to be off as soon as she's given a report, so we're just pushing her up the agenda. Are you ready? Lovely,
I will be when I'm switched on. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you. I'm here to report on 2 meetings of the Health Scrutiny Committee initially from the 13th of February and then from the 12th of March. So the first meeting, largely the main item on the agenda there was presented by DWP about supporting people with learning difficulties into employment. So Lancashire Adult Social Care support a total of 4,200 people with learning disabilities. But that's against an estimated 30,000 people with learning disabilities living in Lancashire. So many of them are living independent lives, possibly supported by family members, not particularly in contact with or needing help from social services. So the Department of Work and Pensions local supported employment scheme have supported 86 individuals with learning disabilities to seek employment. And of those 86, 45% were able to achieve paid employment, and of those people, 69% that employment was sustained for 26 weeks or more. So this is part of a Work Well Vanguard scheme. Lancashire and South Cumbria Integrated Care Board successfully bid to be a pilot for this Employment Trailblazer programme, and it's hoped to be integrated into the DWP mainstream offer in the future. So large employers across Lancashire were invited to get involved with this scheme, to take part, to have some education about making reasonable adjustments and supporting access to work. And there was some feedback provided from employers who felt that they gained a lot from actually employing people with learning disabilities, that it actually improved the ethos of the team, and there were really many positives that came from it. And it was, however, noted that many users with learning disabilities, not just across Lancashire, but in general, have complex needs, and that employment isn't really an option for many people. But that was seen as quite a positive thing. So I think the idea has been to, for those people who are in a position to be able to look for work, to improve their quality of life and their general standard of living and everything else. So it's quite a positive report. And then there was another complicated report about community mental health transformation, and I think that's been an area of concern for a long time in this area. And then a further one about the ME, chronic fatigue and long COVID. That's, we're lucky in that Central Lancashire has a service that provides assistance to these people. It's other parts of Lancashire don't have any help in this regard at all and have to be referred out of area. And it's, I think there's a lot of work to be done in determining how many people are still suffering from long COVID, how many have ME, chronic fatigue syndrome. And we have a long way to go really to make services amenable to all of Lancashire, appropriate and, you know, the right service at the right time. So that's a kind of work in progress. It'll come back to us at the next meeting with some further information. And then if I can tell you about yesterday's meeting, that the larger part about yesterday's meeting was to do with dental health. Now, for a long time, there have been concerns about access to NHS dentistry in Lancashire. And I think Lancashire was seen to be an outlier in that, in terms of the provision here was worse than in other parts of England. Happy to say that things have improved and are hopefully going to continue to improve due to some of the actions that have been taken locally. And these are things like the dental department of the University at UCLan in Preston have a scheme where they're using final year dental students to do some health promotion in schools and nurseries, and their scheme putting placements in local dental practices is with the idea of our homegrown dental students to stay in the area and provide more services, which would be gratefully received, I think, because there are still a lot of people unable to get NHS dentists, as I'm sure you're aware. But in terms of our performance against the rest of Lancashire, Chorley is actually, we are not in the top 10 areas of need based on the ranking service, you'll be glad to know. It would seem that Barrow in Furness has the accolade of being number 1. Chorley is ranked as 16, so we're 16 out of 17, that's not bad, is it? So if you live in Chorley, you've perhaps got a better chance of getting an NHS dentist than elsewhere, but that still isn't answering the problem. And then I asked about prevention of dental caries, because it's all very well saying there's a huge backlog in people with dental problems, they can't get a dentist, but unless you deal with it at the other end, then you've got a continual progress of people coming in with more problems because they're not attending to them early on. So work is ongoing in nurseries and in schools, in family hubs, and with health visitors to promote dental hygiene, to give out free toothbrushes and toothpaste to infants. And there's been a social media campaign. I must admit I didn't see it. It was, what do they call it? Some like spit not rinse or something. They're telling people, I wasn't aware of this until recently, going to an event, that when you use a fluoride toothpaste, you should not then wash your mouth out afterwards. So I've been doing it wrong all of my life, apparently because you're washing all the fluoride off your teeth. So little simple things like that really people need to know about, because unless we can do something to stop the dental caries in children and young children and infants, it's going to progress through and be much greater problems later on. There is a shortage of dentists. It's not just in Lancashire, it's across England. There are not probably enough dentists who are willing to work in the NHS. And I think orthodontics is a particular concern, because obviously there's a right time to do the corrective work for people who need orthodontic treatment. And with a 2 or 3 year waiting list, it's not really happening at the right time, but it's something that at least people are aware of and working towards some resolution. So there's a sort of golden handshake provision now, so that if you want to be a dentist in Lancashire, you are given a financial incentive to come and start up. So all of these things in turn are starting to help. Lancashire's no longer an outlier compared to the rest of the UK, where we weren't doing as well as other parts. Now we're pretty well in that average range. And as I say, Chorley is one of the better ones within Lancashire looking at the data. So I think that's quite encouraging. Okay, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor France. Thanks very much for attending all those meetings and understanding and translating them for us. Does anybody have any questions for Councillor France? Councillor Green?
Hi, Margaret. Just on the mention about the community mental health transformation.
Yes.
Just wonder if we get a bit more detail, not necessarily now, but in terms of what are the key things, and just I'm just seeing where, as councillors, where we could help to try and publicise some of that and get the message out across because I'm quite passionate about this subject, so it's just like to know a bit more detail in due course to.
Yeah, we talked about the new learning disability unit that's opened at the former Whittingham Hospital site. I think that's called Water Meadows or something along that line. And they talked about the problem that has been for a long time with mental health in emergency departments that some of you may know of. When people present to A&E with suicidal thoughts or what have you, they can spend a long time waiting to be seen. But there's a target now to get that reduced to an hour, and that is actually being met to a large extent, but there's still a backlog. It's all very well seen and assessing, but then where do you move that person onto when there isn't a place for them to go to? So there are many, many problems within the system, and I think largely the overwhelming problem being the lack of funds at the moment, because we know the ICB and the foundation trusts are all cash strapped, and there isn't the money to invest to really make a big difference to this as things stand at the moment in time, both in staffing and in estate and in finances, to actually make some new progress. But yeah, happy to discuss that with you.
Yeah, Councillor Brown?
Thank you, and thank you for your report. Just on that point further, I just wonder if you're given any level of detail about how many Chorley residents may be potentially in and out of area placement for mental health, and whether there's any trajectories around that or performance around that we need to consider.
That's an interesting question. They didn't break it down by district. I could maybe ask for that data if someone, it should be held somewhere, you would think. But one of the health scrutiny meetings some time ago, it must be probably about a year ago, the ICB were talking about something called, they were talking about rehoming people who were out of the area, and particularly young psychiatric patients is one of those areas. So your eating disorder type patient who would be sometimes 200 miles away. They were small numbers, but a huge problem. Huge problem in cost to the ICB, huge problem for those families who can't visit their child, awful problem for the person themselves in hospital so far away. And there was a real move towards repatriation of those patients. Perhaps cynically, I suspect that's more to do with the cost of what it is to have them outside of the area. But the danger then is, because it is a highly specialised field, you bring them closer to home. Have you got all the services in place and the skill and the experience of dealing with what would be small numbers? So you're creating what is in effect a fragile service, because there's only 5 or 6 maybe in one unit instead of 20 or 30 where you build up the skills and the knowledge. So I think that one is a very tough situation. Do you leave people out of the area because there's more specialised service? Do you bring them closer, but then you lose maybe that real level of expertise? I don't know the answer to some of these questions.
It would be interesting to see it and what the plans are around that. So I take your point on Chorley. For smaller services, there might be less. But if we just took it on a Lancashire footprint, so at least those patients were seen within Lancashire and not down in the likes of Surrey, etc., which is what happens now when there's no, or they stay in ED for a long time when they shouldn't be there, and it's inappropriate. And then if we could see that by age as well, so the paediatric provision is different again to the adult provision. And I do know of cases where, children are being sent significantly out of area, away from their families, because the provision isn't there. So I think it would be interesting to understand if the ICB understands that level of need that we have in this area as a Lancashire footprint, and what Chorley is within that. There may be some options within that.
I think a few of us are old enough to remember massive numbers of mental health beds that were shut down in the care in the community programme some 30 years ago, maybe it must have been. Many inpatient beds were lost at that time, and I think we're still suffering the consequences of it. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Towers?
I don't know if this is out of the scope of kind of that the area, but looking at, has there been any kind of look at SEN provision and CAMS in specific areas? So school special needs provision, and whether there's any patterns or linkage to areas where there is real problems. Yeah, I don't know if it was completely out of scope of it, or has there been any exploration of that?
I think we had a separate meeting about SEND provision. I think that was the meeting before the February one I reported on, but there is an acknowledgement that there are major problems with SEND provision, and just getting the assessments. The bottleneck seems to be for a lot of parents. They know they have a problem, the teachers know they have a problem, they can't get the assessment, and until you've had the assessment you cannot get the additional provision in schools. You know, the extra teaching hours or what have you, the support that those children need, or in the more severe cases it may be a specialist school. And many parents are going to outside private organisations to get those assessments undertaken as a result of that. But I think we have a great shortage of speech and language therapists, of occupational therapists, and all of the people who are required to do these type of assessments to give that child the best start in life, really, because we're failing them at the moment.
Thank you. Any other questions for Councillor France before we let her go? I let go. So, in a rush to get Margaret up the agenda, I've missed public questions, item 3. Okay. Thank you. Also, we're moving, so we've moved Margaret, haven't we? So, so that's item 4, and then we're going on to item 5, which is the notice of executive decisions. So it's available via the link on the iPads. I hope you've all digested them. Does anybody have any questions on those? Oh, okay. So the recommendation is that we that we note the notice of executive decisions. Yep, lovely. Are we taking the Chief Inspector before this? Or is this the one for the... Right, it's right. Okay. So item 6 is the Spotlight Report on Community Partnership Update. The Chair of the Partnership, Jennifer Mullins, is here, and Chief Inspector James Neal of Lancashire Constabulary is here to present the reports. Over to you two.
Okay. Thank you very much for your invite. We've done a full report, so there's lots of detail in there. I'll just go through some of the salient points. So this is a report on the Community Safety Partnership on the update for this year. The Act, the Crime and Disorder Act 1998, established that we had to set up community safety partnerships, and they're responsible for reducing crime and disorder, substance misuse, reoffending. So it's a group of partners that work together to that aim. So there's ourselves, the police, fire and rescue, the probation service, and the integrated care board. But along with that, we've got many other partners that work with us, from housing associations, from some of the voluntary groups who help and work with us, who are not the statutory partners. So the overall position of the group is very positive. We've got loads of active partners who work with us, loads of really passionate people who want to make a difference in the Chorley area. So we have regular officer meetings. They are combined with the organised crime meetings as well, and we talk about individual issues that we've got and how we tackle them, and we've got an action plan. So in the report, it just goes through some of the areas that we deal with on a regular basis, which is, as I mentioned, offender management. And one of the things that we're particularly proud of in Chorley is that individual touch with the groups that we've got, which integrator offender management is one of them, where we deal with individuals and individual issues, whether it's supervision, whether it's different activities that we do. We've also got a group with young people that we're calling Guardian, where we specifically tackle young people who have been drawn into antisocial behaviour and look at tailored approaches for those individual young people. We've also got Chorley Pivot, which again is dealing with people who are vulnerable, again with an individual approach with our social prescribers. So I think that's a bit different from a lot of community safety partnerships. Then we discuss Prevent, which is something that everybody knows about, but it gives you a list of our duties under Prevent and how it's set up in Lancashire. Then we talk, in the report, it mentions about the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner and some of the partnership operations that we've been involved in, which range from organised crime to Operation Centurion and antisocial behaviour. We talk about, in the report, exploitation and what we've been doing. We talk about Guardians, which I mentioned. Then we've Operation Makepeace, looking at child exploitation, shoplifting, and then weapons, and Operation Snap, which you can see about driving offences. The report then goes on to looking at domestic abuse and the commissioning that we do. I work with Lancashire County Council and the Police and Crime Commissioner on that, and you can see the data associated with that. We do work with the Women's Centre, immigration, obviously with White Ribbon, violence against women and girls. So you can see all the Ask Angela, the No Excuse for Abuse, and BMATs and things that we've been doing, and campaigns that we've been doing, including Sanctuary to enable people who are victims of domestic abuse to stay in their own home. You can also see that we are responsible for undertaking domestic homicide reviews. We've got 2 on the go at the moment, and you can see that we have to try and understand the causes and what led up to that abuse and what actions can be taken. I mentioned Pivot, and then there's lots of multi-agency groups on violence and domestic abuse there. And then the final part of the report goes into the statistics for Chorley for the last year, and also for the last for November and December data. And as you can see, there has been a significant reduction, particularly in antisocial behaviour in particular areas, which has been specifically targeted by the Guardian scheme that we talked about. And there has been an overall reduction in all crimes across Chorley. There is some areas of concern, as you can see, burglary, drug offences are on the rise, and sexual offences. So again, we will target our next programme of work on those particular areas of concern. And I think that's it really from us.
Lovely, thanks Jennifer. Does the Chief Inspector want to speak to the report, or are you just here? Are you going to answer questions?
We're more than happy to answer questions.
Yeah, brilliant, excellent. Councillor McGovern. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, and that's
Yeah, that one's on.
So this one, very sorry, it's starting. Whatever that means. Never mind, I'll use this one. It will have the lot. Oh, here we go, Pauline McGovern, that's fine. It's just a quick question. I was just looking at antisocial behaviour. So I was looking at page 16 and 17, really at the table on page 17. I was just curious, because when you're looking at that by ward, the percentage change over, 23, 24, really varies by ward. And you did mention that. And I just wondered, when you look at Chorley North West, it's really come down by 41%. So the incidence has come down, hasn't it? for 2024. But then you look at some of them and the incidence has gone up. So I was just curious to know if there have been any particular initiatives directed at wards like Chorley Northwest, where there's obviously been a big reduction in antisocial behaviour. And I'm looking particularly because my ward is Clayton East, which has gone up. So I was just thinking about that there's a lot of variation between wards.
I think probably some of it does have a lot to do with the initiatives. There's obviously a lot of the good work that yourself does with individuals, the diversionary activities that are available. We have, as you're pretty aware, we're quite data-driven in terms of where we put our resources and when and how and who's directed out. So I think that does have a big impact. Obviously, when we're aware of issues, it's a lot easier to deal with it. I think there is also a general cyclical nature in youth, especially ASB, because some children grow out of it, other areas, some children grow up and start, and it sort of moves around, and then they grow up and it comes somewhere else. So that we do generally see a bit of a change. The big consistencies are if there's a draw to the area, so that people are coming from outside the area to go for one particular thing, or town centres and things like that always do attract that type of attention. In terms of these drops, I think it's pretty a mixture of all of those. If you've got specific issues that you're aware of, I'm more than happy we'll pick that up outside and we can see what we can put in place.
Councillor Green? Oh, sorry, didn't see you waving. Councillor Brown? Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for it's a really comprehensive report, a really interesting read actually. I just wanted to go to the first section, which actually isn't under the duty of the Community Safety Partnership, which is the prevent section in there. And given the recent tragic events that we've seen in Southport, what this is, it's telling us what the open referrals are currently, but it's not telling us what the closed referrals are. And we know that that was part of the issue that was seen with that case. Do we have sight of that, and are there risk assessments in place for people that have been closed to their referrals, and so that we make sure we are picking up any risks with our residents?
So I'm happy unless you've got...
The numbers for Chorley are extremely low. I think last time I looked at the report, obviously we've got one open case, but previously we haven't had any for months and months and months. But my understanding, we're not on the prevent panel, so as a district, but my understanding is that they are risk assessed and monitored, and if there is any concerns that we would be told. I haven't been told any information about anybody in the Chorley area that we should be concerned about.
No, I do sit on the prevent panel, although it's something I've recently taken up. So yeah, essentially there is a whole process in place of stepping down from prevent if it's not suitable and finding suitable alternatives. And if there is any issues, yeah, we will pick them up and risk assess them. So it's not just closed and forgotten.
Councillor Green?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of I've got a few questions actually. So for both yourselves. Thanks for coming, James, by the way. It's great. So one of the things I think you're saying about is in terms of advertising. So you've done lots of campaigns, and also the council's done a number of campaigns. I sort of see about quite a lot of them on Facebook. I just wondered, from a council's point of view, whether when these campaigns were just about to start, where we got more of a heads up on the campaigns, because then we can put posts out ourselves and on social media and bang the drum as well, right from the get-go, rather than being reactive and then saying, apparently there's a campaign going on, or hearing about it after it's all done by. So there's one of my points is I think it would be good if we had some comms about the various campaigns early on, so that we could help sort of be a vehicle for advertising those things.
Yeah, that's certainly something I can take away.
And in terms of also the various sorts of, there was various operations that have gone on. I mean, one of the things that, what was I looking at? Yeah, so things like, Operation Centurion, I've seen it's been quite successful so far from what I can see. But just in terms of the focus of the hotspots, reading the report, it seemed very much like the hotspots, the focus has been on the town centres. Is there been other focus on other hotspots outside Chorley? Because I think just at the moment, reading that as a resident, I'm thinking, right, okay, it's all gone into Chorley Centre, but there is other hotspots around in other wards.
There are. It is, like I sort of mentioned before, very data-driven. So the areas with the largest number in total usually do get the focus. So it has been Chorley Town Centre. It's currently Bamber Bridge because that's struggling with some sort of ongoing ASB. In terms of other areas, the way it works is we'll identify what's happening key times and make sure we've got additional patrols to bring in to them. So yes, I would probably say our Centurion does just focus on the bigger ticket areas, if you will. However, neighbourhood policing works in that same way in a much smaller sort of way. So if there are things that are outside the Centurion areas, we pick them up as business as normal.
Yeah.
So again, if there's any issues that you have that you think we're not picking up, let me know and we'll.
So is that, just for advice for a council, would that be, so where you think there's a hotspot, is that going through the PCSOs and?
Yes, or direct to me
Right.
if you want, or the geographic inspector, if there's something that we're not picking up,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And in terms of the campaigns as well, there was one about, again, looking at is it Spectre, the knife one. So you had it sounds like you had a week-long campaign in December, but will there be a follow-up camp? So one thing is, I appreciate resources as well, first of all. So you have these campaigns, but is there then, it's not just a one-off, is there going to be sort of, so if you've collected loads of knives or you found loads of knives, will there be sort of continual campaigns going forward on that?
Yes, so the way I sort of look at the campaigns especially is it's a focus. So we don't stop just because we've taken that specific focus off. One of the things we do regularly is we review all the data in terms of knife crime, things like that, where the results from this, what we've found, who's been arrested, what that links to, whether it's violence linked to knives, whether it's drug dealing linked to knives. So yeah, they all get picked up and followed on, especially if there is a concern that there is a increase in knife violence, that will get its own separate operation that follows on from that.
Yeah, and then there was one other one, in terms just a general one. Again, you've got all these various means of reporting stuff like antisocial behaviour and speeding and drug dealing. I'm a relatively new councillor, so you've sort of picked this up by osmosis. I just wonder again whether between the council and yourselves is whether as a councillor you come in and say, well, actually these are some of the really key sort of points of contact to go to, or some of the key websites. So for police, actually speeding comes up all the time, antisocial behaviour comes up all the time, drug dealing comes up all the time. Whether there's, just think for us as members, whether there was these are the key websites, key points of contact to go to. Just a suggestion there for a new councillor coming in. And then when it's raised, or I can promote on, occasionally keep on beating the drum, right, speed in our area, and people raise it, go, bang, straight away, report through this, drug dealing, report through this. So
yes, no, I'll have to circulate the links, but there's two probably key mechanisms that we use. Certainly for concerns that aren't reported directly over the phone. Lancashire Talking is probably the main one. That's something people sign up to and report their concerns, and it's an ongoing dialogue essentially, and it should also come with feedback. So it's certainly something I'm driving at the moment, that if you reported ASB in your area, you should get an email back saying this is what we have done about it. So I think that's the key one, and certainly the main one. Speeding slightly different. There is the Safer Roads Network has their own portal, and that directly links then into all the enforcement that they do. So for speed enforcement, and this is where there's slight confusion because there is road safety issues on the Lancashire Talking. We will pick that up and pass it on to Safer Roads, but if it's speeding and things like that, Safer Roads is the best portal to do that, and I'll send those links out.
Yeah, it's just trying to get that knowledge out, because it's trying to empower residents to be able to report themselves rather than feeling they have to come to necessarily council first, which we're fine to do, but it's trying to get as much data to yourselves so you can act upon it.
And then it's in the format that we can take away and deal with.
So that's yeah, thanks, James. That was,
No worries.
really good. Just Jenny, for you, just in terms of, I noticed that the Guardians as well. I looked at the people that are involved in that. I didn't see any council representation. Is there a member of the...
Oh yeah, the council lead guardians.
Right.
So yeah, the community safety team. So they are the ones who run it.
Is there a councillor lead on?
Oh, a council
Yeah.
lead. It would be Councillor Murray.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. And then I noticed that, again, one of the other things you've done in terms of support and providing money towards domestic abuse, which, I think is really good. Again, looking at the figures from, it's been a 22% increase over, well, on 22, 23 figures. Again, just, are you content with that funding you've got going forward? Is actually, because there's been quite a big increase there. I just wonder whether the funding's will match that, is matching that increase at the moment in time.
So the government have provided us with additional funding, new burdens funding they call it, because of the new legislation. So the council's been issued with funding that we can support the community and the community groups, but also funding where we can support sanctuary and our housing team. Because most of the victims generally have to flee their homes or would have to put additional security measures. So we got quite significant new burdens funding to be able to cover that. So that's really good, and we've been able to support additional housing posts through that funding as well.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent thing you're doing as a council, and again, someone banging the drum for that. It's really good. Just one last one on there. It's just those figures there that you. The point you made there, saying it seems like those figures, because you look at them first one, you go, oh, they've gone up quite a bit. But because you've done operations, it's by doing those operations, it drives the figures up. I just wonder whether in a similar report like that, just to take a bit of the fear factor rather than saying, oh my God, we've got a crime burst, we've actually, the figures have been driven up because of the excellent work you've been doing. I just think there might be some guidance in that when those figures, just rather than seeing raw figures, because it can leave people going, oh my God, this is all going terribly, and surely when actually you've been proactive and driven the figures up by catching people. So just one point there. Yeah. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Green, for your interesting questions. Councillor Lees?
Thank you, Chair. Just a few questions. On page 14, the statistics regarding the crimes, I can accept that these crimes are reported, but in regards to some of them, the perpetrator is identified straight away. But in others like burglary, you've got 320 for this year. What's the percentage of resolving those cases? And in the other cases like arson and criminal damage, do we have any statistics to show whether these cases have been solved?
I haven't brought them, but I can get them if needed. It's a valid question.
If you can send them in, we'll distribute them.
Yeah, no worries.
So, it's just that violence against the person that is identified straight away who the perpetrator is. Public order, they're identified straight away. And I look at public order, that could be anything from visiting football fans to anything, which aren't really premeditated. But burglary is premeditated, and it would be interesting to find out where they're targeting, and the lack of information that the police can get to solve those crimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So just on the burglary, because actually it was one I was going to bring up. We've been looking quite closely at those because obviously they're really concerning crime. A lot of the burglaries in Chorley have been from new building sites, which class as residential because they're houses, but people have been going in and stealing the boilers, the doors, the windows, the piping. So whilst it's still obviously a really serious crime, it's not somebody's house that they're living in, which has skewed the figures to make them increase.
What you're saying is it's necessary from building sites?
Yes.
So is that not theft?
No.
As opposed to burglary?
It depends on the stage that the house is at as to what it's classed as. So if it was just a building site, it would be theft. But once they start to become dwellings and lights on and that type of thing,
All
especially
right,
when they
okay.
start putting piping in, it starts becoming burglaries. So, yeah, so they look quite concerning, but hopefully that's a bit more reassuring than that number. And it probably also links into yourself in terms of the Lancashire talking. When we have an address burgled, we will visit, part of my neighbourhood team will visit the victim. Then they will visit the addresses on the cardinal point, so it should be the neighbour areas basically, to let them know what's happened, give them some security advice, do the CCTV, although that should already have been done, and then we send out a message through Lancashire Talking to that area just to let everybody know that there has been a burglary. Because we do know statistically if somebody gets burgled, the addresses en route will probably have been scoped as well, so they'll come back and because they've got a bit of knowledge. So, yeah, just covering those. We are really quite conscious, especially around burglaries, the impact they have.
On another item, we talked about domestic abuse and that. I've noticed on the news recently, it was reporting on things which are happening in Manchester where they've got this system going, which you're probably aware of, where instead of having to go to court, there's these fixed penalties or whatever they call them. In Manchester, are you aware of those, are you?
Domestic violence?
Yeah.
I've got to say I'd have to look
I
into
don't know
that.
whether it's more serious than domestic violence, but it's where instead of having to go to court, you can place something on them that if they continue, they get a straight without it going to court.
Yes, so there's domestic violence protection orders.
Yeah.
Potentially, I think there's other protection orders and civil orders that we're using. Certainly, Lancashire, we use DVPNs, domestic violence protection notices and orders quite regularly.
Right.
Usually, they are for cases where, for whatever reason, either the victim can't or doesn't want to or feel able to go to court, to protect them in the meantime, so that we're not just letting the suspect go and return back home, so we can then apply to a court to exclude them from the area. So it's basically a short-term restraining order, and we use them very regularly. And we should, essentially, the rule is if you're letting somebody go without a charge, they should be considered, and it's a reason of why we haven't used it rather than why we have.
So what happens if they break that?
They get arrested, and it's a
They
whole
get arrested,
separate.
and it's automatically.
Yes, and then we can charge them with that, regardless of the evidence for any other offences.
Okay, thank you. That's it, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lees. Councillor Green?
Quick one follow-up. It's a pot about burglaries. That makes a point about what I was saying. Those burglaries, mate, because you go, oh my God, it's really terrible burglaries, but actually it's sort of more like theft of a burglar, not having an immediate impact on people. That's to say, when residents see those, they'll be thinking it's a real bad hotspot. So again, that just point Roy made there, probably maybe a bit of granular, a bit more explanation on some of the figures in future, just to stop hairs running.
Yeah.
Does the other one just? I just sort of thought in terms of your relations between transport police as well. So where you've got train stations, I've been made aware that people can come on train stations, get off the trains, do the drug dealing, and off they go. And is there, if you're aware of that, or has that been flagged up, or is there a relationship between your transport police and yourselves about dealing with that?
So it's not something I'm aware of locally. Again,
Right.
if there is information, we would definitely run with it. We have a really good relationship with BTP, certainly with Preston being so close. They're quite regularly. We do speak to them. We've got direct contact through our control centre to them. Like I say, I'm not aware of it being an issue locally. We do know, obviously, drug dealers use the train lines,
Yeah.
and so do they. I know I have run previously operations where we've used their drugs dogs because it's quite a nice area.
Yeah.
Once they're on the train, you're trapped. So
Yeah.
it's got a... it sort of cuts both ways, does the use of the train. But yeah, I'm not aware of it locally, but if there's any information,
Cool.
absolutely.
Cheers, thanks a lot.
Did you want to, Councillor McGovern? You look like you were waving. You the other one. That one. That one. Yeah.
It still says funny, I can't. Never mind, Pauline Mullen, there we go. A trivial thing, just, I'm nosy. There's a famous example in statistics of a false correlation between burglary and the amount of ice cream that people eat. And the reason it's used is because the real correlation is between open windows. It's to do with summer. And I wondered whether that's true also in Chorley, or do we have too much rain for people to be having their windows open?
You're quite right. I like statistics. They can prove anything, can't they? You do need to be careful of what is. But generally, in terms of summer, yeah, we see more vehicle thefts in winter when people leave the cars unlocked to defrost them, and more burglaries when windows are left open. So yeah, no, you're right.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear. Thank you.
So, Councillor Snape?
Thank you. Might be a really silly question, but on the statistics it says misc crimes against society. Is that miscellaneous? So does that mean everything else that's not covered in the...
Yeah, there's a lot. I thought that would come up, so I did start to list them, but there's a lot. So it includes things like escape from lawful custody. It is essentially everything else.
My other one was just, I noticed the rural task forces are on the Police and Crime Commissioner's plan, but it doesn't seem to be on the main committee report for the Chorley information. I just wondered, do we see anything of the rural task force in Chorley?
Yes, so they're in my portfolio as well. They're normally based or keep all their equipment in Ormskirk, but they cover the whole of South Division. So yeah, they do operate up here. Again, they go where the issues are most. But yeah, I'm trying to think of any recent big operations they've done here, which I can't off the top of my head. But yeah, no, there's certainly not part of us, and like I say, they work under me. So if we need them, we'll get them.
Excellent. I've got a question now. I just wondered, and it's probably both of you really, because just in Chorley we've had a big push on HMOs, which is a totally different set of people who will live probably in a HMO in the middle of town, and usually a single person, because these HMOs are going to be smaller anyway, just in themselves. I'm just wondering whether that's on the radar, because when they all actually are built, finished and lived in Chorley, there's going to be a lot of them, because a lot of them have been approved very recently. And if you're adding the numbers of the people up, it's going to be a big number of people. I'm just really conscious that you know it's coming. I mean, Jennifer knows it's coming because, of course, you see those applications and you get to sort of look through them. But from a policing point of view and from a crime point of view, and us feeling safe on the streets point of view as well, just really anything that you're going to do when they come on board.
I suppose it essentially would be whether there is an issue. At the moment, well, I've no proactive plans in relation to them, but I know we talk very regularly, don't we? So if there was anything that started to emerge, or we found it through people reporting it, Lancashire Talking, or through normal, we would pick that up as a separate problem. So I've no plans at the moment, but obviously if there are, or are there specific concerns that you think are worth us pre-planning in, I'm more than happy to consider that.
I think it's just as long as it's on your both radars, which I know.
Yeah, it definitely is. It very much depends on the HMO. So we've got a range of houses of multiple occupation to, professionals who are, starting off in getting on the property ladder, and saving up to buy their own home, to supported accommodation for people who are particularly vulnerable. That end is where we actually find the issues. So there is legislation that was introduced in Parliament about a year ago on supported accommodation. It hasn't come through as yet. We're just waiting for the regulations. But this is to properly regulate the sector, because anybody potentially could be a supported accommodation provider, and they're not supervising their clients as well as they should do. So they are given enhanced housing benefits, but whether they're using that money properly to properly supervise their clients in the house of multiple occupation is a question. So hopefully when the regulations are enacted, that will require them to be licensed. It will require full inspections of the properties, and will require them to keep proper records of who they're supporting and what support they're giving to those individuals. So hopefully once we've got that in, we can properly regulate that end of the sector. If they are particularly large HMOs, we can license them as well, but that is generally for the safety of the tenants rather than for community safety aspects. But we do hopefully once we get that regulation in, that sector will be tightened up and we'll be able to inspect them on a regular basis.
That sounds promising. Yeah, Councillor Lees?
Yeah, regarding HMOs, you know, in Manchester there's a hell of a lot of HMOs. In London, a lot of people, my daughter was living in an HMO, you know, but they were all working. You know, it's a different class. Have we any evidence within Lancashire, you know, these small towns, where HMOs are used for working people or people who are likely to cause trouble? Or are the big spurge what we're having now, are they tending to go to certain kinds of people?
I mean, it is very hard to say. HMOs are needed. We've got lots of single people who live in Chorley who find it difficult to get onto the property ladder or find it difficult to find somewhere to live. So when you look at our select move list, I would say probably about 60% of those are single people who need accommodation. So it does fill a gap that is definitely needed. We just need to make sure they are tightly regulated. We need to make sure that the properties are maintained and that we are keeping an eye on them. And hopefully when we get the regulations, particularly on supported accommodation, that is where we can make the difference to people who are quite vulnerable.
Definitely. Are there any other questions? I just wanted to say thanks for the report and all the information that's in it, and there's a lot to digest there, and any more that comes along from the questions, I'm sure Claire will circulate them all when she gets anything in. Thanks very much. Cheers for that. Right. Are we... I think you could go. Are we noting the report first, or... Yeah. I've lost my place on the agenda. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't think we're doing anything with it. Yeah, we're noted. Lovely. Yeah, we'll let you go. Thanks very much. Pardon? No, I think... Yeah, so item 7, the draft annual report. Hope you've all had an opportunity to have a little skim through it. Let Claire know of anything that you see that needs correcting, if anything slipped in there. Not sure about those photos.
I will. I just wondered, I read it last night and it says on page 16 at the bottom, or page 4 if you look at the numbers, that we've had the committee received updates on previous scrutiny reviews, recruitment and staff retention and empty properties. But I am quite obsessed with the empty properties one, and I went through all my minutes, and the empty properties one went to Cabinet in November 2023, and we haven't had a monitoring report since. So.
All right. I'm sure Claire will look into that and either correct it or make sure it gets to us one way or the other.
And I'm not sure, but because Ryan shared the recruitment and retention, I'm not sure if we've had a monitoring report on the recruitment and retention one either, to be honest. But I'm not as clued up on that one.
Okay, maybe they're from another section then, but I'm sure she'll look into that.
Thank you
very much for that. Yeah. So, any other questions about the annual report? So, are we approving that? Yep. Are we okay to approve that report to be published? Yeah, lovely. Yeah, subject to a couple of corrections. If anybody's got any, send them in to Claire quickly.
Chair,
Yeah.
just to let you know, there's going to be a final report to be presented to the committee in July 2025, because at the moment we're still in year. So there will be some further information to be put in there. Thanks.
Great. So, item 8, yes, overview and scrutiny work programme. You've got the programme there. You've got any questions or queries on that? Yep, Councillor Snape. I'm going to send you out in a minute.
Empty properties. I know it says for today that this is being progressed by the Director of Property and Planning. Progress report planned for Executive Cabinet. But it does seem, I mean, I've been a councillor for 12, 13 years, and I know it does seem like a long, long time, November 2023 to March 2025, to have not had a monitoring report. I know they didn't want to do the task group in the first place. But it does seem, because some of those things that were recommended are going to become irrelevant.
Okay. Claire?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to let you know that I have been chasing up an update on the empty properties. And as you'll be aware, the lead officer for that task group, he will be leaving us soon. So there's been a handover to the Director of Property and Planning, who is going to pick that up, and there's going to be a report to Cabinet in June. Thank you.
Okay, we're okay with the work programme. So, item 9 is reports from the task and...
Oh, Chair, sorry, just before we move on, there was just a requested amendment to the ONS work programme.
Right, have I missed that? Have I misreading that out? See, I'm looking at the wrong piece of paper. There we go. So, all right, so the requested amendment to the schedule is that the procurement strategy report be moved to October 25. And this is because the guidance on the Procurement Act only came out earlier this month, and the social value elements are not being brought forward until October this year. And is that okay with everybody to move that to October 2025? So that's the procurement strategy one. Yeah. Okay, Claire? Yeah, lovely. So I've got to invite Councillor Beach to update on the task and finish group, is that right?
Thank you, Chair. So I've got the update on behalf of Councillor Beach, as she's not here tonight. So it's just that a formal Cabinet response and progress update on the implementation of the recruitment and staff retention task group recommendations are now going to be submitted to Executive Cabinet in June 2025. This will enable a fuller and more detailed report to be considered in relation to the living wage accreditation and procurement elements of the review, which should have progressed further by that stage. So it'll be more benefit, and there'll be more information in the report, so it'll be more beneficial to members. Thanks.
Okay. We've got no other report backs from the other task groups, have we? We have.
So thank you, Chair. So again, on behalf of Councillor Beach, just on with regard to the review of the overview and scrutiny task group. So since the last meeting, there was a date scheduled in February, but this has had to be rescheduled. So there's now 2 new dates in April that for the leader of the council and the chief executive to be interviewed. So these are to be agreed imminently, and then the invite will be going out hopefully tomorrow or next week for members. Thanks.
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know I actually turned up for that meeting. All on my own. Councillor Green.
I just noticed on the dates for the Oversight and Scrutiny Committee, on the, if I forgot to write my diary, 27th of July, that's a Sunday, is that right?
Yeah, you are not all right with Sundays?
Oh, yeah, I can come in next Sunday. But
I'm sure it will get corrected. So that's what, that schedule meeting, is it?
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
27th
of July. Okay. Not in July, no, gosh. I burned to a crisp. March. I am, yeah. Are we good with the dates then, Claire? Yeah, oh, okay, right. That's the reports from the task and finish group. So number 10 is any other business previously agreed with me. Or you? No? I'll close the meeting. Thanks very much, everyone.